Let's talk muscle mass for the general population. It is not to be understated just how important growing muscle mass is for developing a good physique. Muscle is the show and the go, and it makes people who are slimmer look far better as their physique becomes detailed and toned, creating contrast and shape. But it allows people with a little bit higher body fat to still have shape and look a lot better and more aesthetic even at higher body fats. Truly, it is not to be understated just how much muscle mass is a main contributor to people's satisfaction when changing their physique. So how do we grow muscle? Instead of getting into the anatomy and physiology, let's focus on the inputs and coaching decisions by way of our programming. A good framing for outlining muscle stimulus is via total weekly volume. This is a very common way of doing it, with upsides and downsides to framing our training this way, but it looks like this, and it is simple and it's easy to use. We simply look at all the muscles, this is simplified, and we look at how many sets we're giving them per week. Straightforward. We will get into what a set consists of. A tool I constantly use in my own programming is this table. Gotta get my head out of the way. No, I can't do it. And this table not only shows you how many sets we're doing per week, but what days of the week we're doing those sets on, which means I get an idea of how many rest days my clients have had in between those exposures, as well as the total amount through the week. So you can see this person has 6 sets of quads and hamstrings on Monday, then 6 and 5 sets of quads and hams on Friday. I know they're getting 3 days rest. I can measure performance on both days and see if both things are going up or if I need to change the amount of rest they're getting in between sessions. And I've got that total volume over here. I will break that down in another video. For now, let's move on. The natural question after seeing a table like that is, well, that's all good. I know that I have to give each muscle sets per week to get it growing, but how many sets? And so let's quickly answer that. The truth is we'll probably never know exactly how many sets. Figuring out optimal volume per week is a topic that has countless studies, books, articles, and strategies ready to over-explain. I myself have been one of those people, looking at those studies and trying to interpret exactly how many sets I should be giving to each client. The truth is, it's probably a pointless endeavor. Perfect is the enemy of good. What that means is that pursuing optimality often leads us to chasing theories or ideologies or explanations that retrofitted. So we had this outcome, it's because of this, where really you're just doing enough to create adaptation for the body to get better over time. And if you did 6 sets or you did 14, you were going to see similar gains, and there's no way to go back and test if 6 sets would have been just as good as 14. So in advanced programming, when we cover it, we will figure out ways to test these things. But for now, the truth is over optimality is probably purposeless. Pursuing it is probably a waste of time. Take the pressure off. We just have to make good decisions that work for the majority of people, and then we can narrow down the window over time. So here's an easy claim based on the data I've seen and my 10 years of coaching, and I think I've been privileged enough and can be confident enough to say that every single person who walks through my doors has gotten better, has gotten more muscular, and has gotten stronger without fail. So, easy claim. If you're getting stronger over a few months, it's enough volume to grow. The reason I say that is because after you've been doing an exercise for, let's say, 5 weeks, you don't really get that much more skilled at it if it's a low skill movement. Take a lat pull down, seals row, push up, maybe like a leg press. You get good at it over 4 to 5 weeks, your body adapts, and you'll have this really steep strength curve as your body adapts to that movement. But then, we're not going to get that much of a return on strength or nervous system adaptation from there. The main thing that's going to drive progression ongoingly is going to be the addition of muscle mass. And so if you're getting stronger over a few months, it's not strength adaptation anymore, per se. It's probably muscle mass that's driving that adaptation, and you're in the clear. You're making gains. Here's some easy numbers to throw at you. The more sets we do, the less we get per set in terms of gains. It's not more. We don't just add more sets and get more growth. It's diminishing returns. We put this many sets in, we get this much gains. 4 to 6 sets a week, we're probably getting 1-to-1 gains. Awesome. 6 to 10 sets, we're probably getting 1-to-1 gains, maybe 3/4 of the gains we could have got. 10 to 14 sets, we start to see a drop off, in my opinion. You're going to get 3/4 of the gains for some people, but maybe just like a third of the gains that you could have got for other people. Some people don't get that much benefit of doing more than 10 sets a week. 14 to 20 sets, maybe you're getting half the gains. Some people literally go backwards and they get minus gains. There is some literature supporting these ideas. 20 plus sets a week only works for some people, in my opinion, only for certain muscle groups. I would say 1 in 3 people probably have the ability to train 20 sets plus on certain muscles and actually benefit of it. When I say actually benefit, it's very hard to discern if they're benefiting from, let's say, 12 set to 20 sets. There's no visual difference in how fast they're gaining muscle. It's very difficult to track, takes a lot of effort. So the sweet spot for most of you will be 6 to 14 sets per muscle per week. And we're going to discuss what a set is. I've had people deadlift, essentially beginner to 270 kilos using that method. I've had people chuck on absolute slabs of muscle mass using that method. It is tried and true and a little bit adversarial to the average amount of sets that people will spout on social media, and maybe even a little bit different to what people claim that they're doing on social media as well. And that's because there's a bit of a difference in focus on quality in our sets rather than just how many sets we're doing, and we're going to break that down next. So here I've got what those sets consist of, and they're essentially all of the exercise categories and which ones are the most important for growing the most amount of muscle. But we will cover that in a different video. For now, suffice to say, big compound movements grow more muscle than small movements. Small movements are good for areas that don't get touched by the compound movements. It's no means a list of everything exhaustive function that you can do in the body. It was a poor sentence. It is by no means an exhaustive list of all the functions you can do in the body. Of not even all of our trainable functions of the body. We have heaps. It's simply the biggest bang for our buck exercises to start general trainees off with. These are the ones that grow a lot of muscle mass, function, and strength. Some are more important than others, but we'll break it down another time. Now, we're going to have to talk about what is often the limiting factor for most of our clients' progress in the gym, and that is going to be time. With only so much time spent in the gym per week, our coaching often becomes a question of how do I present as much stimulus towards the goal adaptation as I possibly can? Here's a term, stimulus to minute ratio. How much stimulus am I creating for the person per session? One very practical way to ensure we're presenting good, strong global muscle stimulus to an athlete is being strategic with the exercise we use. We need to present a lot of muscle stimulus because we only have so much time with them, so we need to maximize the gains they're going to get within that hour, 45 minutes, half an hour. I am warning you. The idea here, if you come from a gym bro background of training each muscle together and training it once a week, won't initially sit well with you. But all the strength and conditioning coaches, power lifters, Olympic lifters, CrossFitters that have been turning out high-performing, strong and jacked athletes since the dawn of time will understand this concept right away. So, we have our sets. A common way to program is to split volume up per muscle. A great rule of thumb for general trainees is overlap, don't isolate. So this example here is one that should illustrate this point. The movements in purple here, they're all isolation or more isolated exercises. We have hip thrusts, which train primarily just glutes, and they train hip extension. Flies, which just train primarily the pecs, and we can just count that as a push movement, but really it's horizontal abduction. Let's not get overcomplicated with our labeling of like joint function. Lat pullovers, which is mostly a lat movement. Rope pushdowns, triceps, and leg extension, quads. Contrast that with the orange or pink workout here. Instead of hip thrusts, which gets 3 sets of glutes, we could do RDLs, which gets glutes, hamstrings, erectors, and adductors. 4 big muscle groups trained. And instead of getting just hip extension trained on a hip thrust, we're getting hip extension, flexion, spine extension, or just the ability to isometrically contract your spine, and hip internal rotation and external rotation as well. 4 big muscles trained instead of mostly just one muscle, maybe 2 in the hip thrust. Same amount of time. And instead of flies, 4 sets of pecs, we could have bench pressed, which we would have got 4 sets of pecs, a bit of delts, a bit of triceps. Instead of a lat pullover, we can do a lat pull down, not only getting lats, but maybe getting a little bit of upper back and getting a bit of biceps as well. Instead of rope pushdowns, we could have hit 5 sets of close grip push-ups, still getting the triceps to failure first, but we're getting pecs and we're getting delts as well. Now we've doubled up on the pecs so far in this orange workout, giving them about 9 sets rather than just 4. And instead of leg extensions, we could have done a goblet squat, which again, we get the quads, glutes, and adductors, doubling up on the glutes and doubling up on the adductors. Not only are the joint functions completely different, you train a lot more full body coordinated movement, but you're literally just giving your body a much more heavy duty, robust, global muscle building stimulus. Overlap, don't isolate. It's much more respectful of the person's time to give them a lot more productive work done in a shorter amount of time. What makes a good set? We're going to slowly break these things down, and I'm going to do them one by one, but I'm going to give you an overview first and a brief explanation to finish this video. These are the things that contribute to quality. When there is not enough quality of stimulus through these factors, then quantity will be necessary to compensate. And this is where you see a lot of people going to the gym and banging out 18 sets of lats or back in a workout, 12 sets of quads. I assure you that I don't have many clients that can do 12 whole, perfectly executed and quality quad sets and properly not spew. If you've heard that and you find that a little bit confronting, then you probably have a few things to work on in terms of your execution. Let's go through them. The most important factor that influences quality of training stimulus is your proximity to failure. 5 reps or closer is the standard. We will go through and break them down in more detail. Range of motion needs to be suited to you. It needs to be the right range of motion for the joint that you're trying to train and the muscle that you're trying to train. Sometimes more or less is better. Braced or bracing. This is if your setup is well braced to allow for high force output. Weight training is a slow sport, which means you need to lock yourself into place and grind as your muscle mass approaches failure. If you're not able to sit in the same position and grind through a rep, what happens is that the joint changes position and all of a sudden you're not tensioning the target muscle, you're just moving stuff around. Execution, your skill. Are you programming in a way that allows your skill to develop and to express the most amount of strength possible and the most amount of duress possible to a muscle? Or do you suck? I know, I would say yes. Strength and resistance curves. Does the difficult part of the exercise match up with the muscle leverage? Now, that doesn't mean it actually has to match up. Essentially, where a movement is the hardest and easiest relative to the muscle you're training will have an impact on the stimulus or quality of that set. We will break it down. Internal load of the muscle is the culmination of all the above factors, and it's what we want to stimulate growth. The last one is novelty or a trained exercise. If you haven't done it enough, your central nervous system will not be good at performing the movement, and we will not be able to present a high quality stimulus. This can kind of overlap with execution or skill in a way, but in reality, even if you are very skilled at a movement, if you haven't trained it for a while, you will not be able to output your maximum stimulus for that set. We're going to break all of these down in separate short videos, but for now, we'll leave it there. And that's the introduction to how to grow muscle for the general trainee.